quite nervous about the protocol of leaving Mexico after all of the work that we had put in getting that lovely plastic ID card stating that we were now temporary residents of Mexico. Hi, welcome to La Paz Bound. I'm Nikki. My husband Don and I, along with our 5 pets, are planning to move from Tampa, Florida to La Paz, Mexico, where we plan to retire early. My channel talks about the process of getting there, downsizing and selling our home, figuring out logistics of making the big move, as well as daily life in Tampa, Florida. And if this type of content interests you, then please consider subscribing to my channel. Don and I were quite nervous about leaving Mexico after spending a wonderful and somewhat stressful week in our second home country. So we had been working for 6 months gathering up all of our 401k paperwork, making countless trips to UPS and FedEx to get all of our financial statements copied in color, notarized, scanned, and then PDF'd so that we could send some of it to our facilitator for translation services, not to mention trying to find a place where we could get 32 by 26 millimeter visa photos when all of the typical places around us, they only knew how to take and provide passport photos. I took time off of work to go get my birth certificate from Vital Statistics during business hours. I sent off certified copies of our marriage certificate to Tallahassee to go get apostilled, hoping that it would arrive back in time for our Cancun trip. We Google translated Mexican government web pages to enter our information in hopes of getting an appointment at the Orlando Mexican consulate. And while there, we made a mad dash to our bank to get 6 months of bank statements printed, along with getting an employment verification letter 2 days before Christmas. When we were at the I&M office in April during the all-day process of exchanging our visa stamp and our passports for our temporary Mexican residency cards, our facilitator mentioned that we would need to check in with the I&M office at the airport and show them our new residency cards before we left to go back to the United States. He also mentioned that they would write RT in our passports, which indicates residencia temporal or temporary residence. But we weren't sure where the I&M was located in the Cancun airport. We had read on various Facebook groups that sometimes there's no one there at the I&M stations or offices inside the various airports in Mexico, and that they may even be closed. We also needed to check my husband's bag as he purchased tequila while in Isla Mujeres. So do we check the bag first and then go to the I&M, or vice versa? Do we go through customs, and what about security? In this video, which is part 2, please go check out part 1 if you want to see our experience of what it was like flying into Cancun and what we did to get through immigration to start the process of getting our canje. But in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what we did, in what order that we did it in, to get through the Cancun airport as new temporary Mexican residents, leaving Mexico for the first time as residents and flying back to the U.S. I mentioned in another video that we kept our Cancun hotel throughout our entire stay. It was a package deal with flight and hotel, and it was booked through Expedia. It was just easier to keep that hotel while we visited and stayed overnight in Playa del Carmen and Isla Mujeres. Plus, we had pre-booked our round-trip airport transportation through USA Transfer Services, and they were picking us up at that Cancun hotel on the day of departure. If you want to see where we stayed and what our opinions are of the 3 hotels in Cancun, Playa del Carmen, and Isla Mujeres, check out that video. I'll link it below. We had a 1:40 p.m. direct flight on JetBlue from Cancun back to Tampa, same airline that we flew in on. Before we headed to the airport, I had reached out to a contact in the private Mexico Relocation Guide Facebook page. This contact is a top contributor and was also the person that referred me to the dentist in Playa del Carmen, where I got my tooth checked out and I also got that cleaning. And I talk more about that in depth in my Playa del Carmen video if you want to go check that out. I reached out to this contact to see if he could tell me which order we needed to do things in at the airport and where the I&M was located. And I'm going to share with you what he told us in case you're in a similar situation. USA Transfer Services, they picked us up at 10 o'clock at our hotel. Actually, they were about 10 minutes early, which was very nice since we weren't sure how the traffic was going to be getting back to the airport on a Saturday. Since our hotel was at the end of the hotel zone, we were much closer to the airport than some of the other hotels in that zone. So it only took about 15 minutes to get to the airport. We were dropped off at Terminal 4, which is the same terminal we arrived at. The first thing that we did was we checked in with JetBlue on the lower level and we checked my husband's bag. We didn't need to show our temporary residency cards at baggage check-in, just our passports, although we had the residency cards out and available if they needed them. The next thing we did at the Terminal 4 in the Cancun airport was to walk all the way to the very end where the escalators are located. Before going up the escalators to where security and the gates are located, we turned left by the escalators where the small I&M office is located. So it's kind of tucked around the corner from the escalators. There was no line at either the baggage drop-off and the I&M office, despite Cancun being the second busiest airport in Mexico. Unlike when we arrived to Cancun and showed the immigration officer the paper that was translated into Spanish from our facilitator so we wouldn't be mismarked as tourists, we didn't have anything to show the immigration officer on departure. We don't speak Spanish very well, so we didn't communicate with the officer either, other than hola and gracias. We rolled the dice and presented our temporary Mexican residency cards first, as our facilitator had advised us to do so, and then our passports when she asked for them. The immigration agent stamped our passport, and then in the far right corner of the stamp wrote "R Temp." We both breathed a sigh of relief, as that was our biggest hurdle and the one that I was most worried about when departing from the Cancun airport. We then hopped on the escalators and we headed up to the security checkpoint. Unlike in the United States where you can go to TSA pre-check or the regular security line, I didn't see anything like that at the Cancun airport. Everyone went into the same type of security check-in line, and unlike in the United States where lines just get backed up because there's only a few security lanes open, there were at least 10 lanes open in the Cancun airport. I was a little worried about the food I was bringing back, as well as the medications that we had picked up earlier in our trip at a couple of pharmacies. I intentionally put all the medications in the same area of my suitcase that was easy to see on the scanners and get to if needed. But we weren't questioned about anything. Amoxicillin, Xanax, Valium, those traditional breakfast biscuits that I love, they all went through security without any hassle. So once you are past the security check-in point, that's where the real change is noticeable between arrivals and departures.
Hola. No, gracias.
On arrival, we saw car rental stations, some places to exchange money, a couple of small duty-free shops. Departures felt much different. The duty-free stores, they're much bigger. They're filled with designer perfumes and sunglasses and tequila, as well as cigarettes with big smoking kills, warning labels on the boxes. walked through the food court, which was full of chain restaurants and shops like Starbucks, Victoria's Secret, Panda Express, and Johnny Rockets. Our closest Johnny Rockets in Tampa is in Citrus Park, or at least it used to be. I haven't been to the Citrus Park Mall in quite a few years, and it's quite a drive from where we live. So we decided to grab some lunch before getting on our flight. And if you remember from my other videos, the beef in Mexico tastes different than in the United States, with some exceptions. Well, Johnny Rockets was no exception. It was bad. Johnny Rockets was the last place that we ate at in Mexico, and I left it off of my other two videos of everything we ate in Mexico, parts 1 and 2. Go check those out if you're interested. I don't know if it was this particular Johnny Rockets that was bad or if they have gone downhill in general, but the first thing that I noticed was that the hamburger seemed waterlogged. And I've seen this before in restaurants with high volume turnover where hamburgers are pre-cooked and then kind of reconstituted when an order is placed. So that was the first thing. The second thing was the taste. At other places where I tried beef, the taste was just a little bit off to me. But here it was just bad. It didn't taste anything like hamburger meat to me. I just couldn't eat it. And it was an expensive meal too. I think it came to around $35-40 USD for 2 burgers, fries, and 2 drinks. Also, unlike in the United States where you have a specific gate and you wait at it or you rush to it, departure gates at the Cancun airport are usually only announced about an hour ahead of boarding. And the gates can change at any moment as well, which is what happened to us. Luckily, we received notification on our phones of our gate change right as I was heading in to go to the bathroom. There's also more shopping stalls along the gate areas.
This is the final boarding call for customers in JetBlue flight 1130 to Newark. Please proceed immediately to gate 63.
Again, quite different from when you first arrive. Had we not checked in on the lower level when we first arrived to check Dawn's bag, I'm sure the gate agent would have called us up before the flight to give us a paper ticket. So luckily we got the paper ticket before heading to our gate. So that was how we got through the Cancun airport and in the exact order in which we, as new residents of Mexico, were able to navigate through the airport in order to return to the United States. I will say that coming back to the Tampa airport was also an experience. While we didn't have to go through customs when we left Cancun, we did have to go through customs when we arrived in Tampa. And we were asked if we brought back anything. So Don declared his tequila and I declared my breakfast biscuits, but our bags were never searched. We were also asked where we live in Tampa. But unlike the Cancun airport that has dozens of immigration stalls when you first arrive, the Tampa airport immigration lines, in my opinion, were despicable. There were 2, maybe 3 agents for hundreds of passengers. And what made it even more uncomfortable was that persons with a United States passport were ushered into a separate, shorter line from those with non-U.S. passports. Even in that short line, we waited at least 30 minutes to get through customs. When I looked at the other line, there were elderly people and children that seemed like they had been waiting a long time in that line. And that line got 1 agent, 1, for all of those people. The paradox between how smoothly lines flowed at the Cancun airport with immigration and customs to how it just became a complete standstill at the Tampa airport was mind-boggling and eye-opening. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this content of how we got through the Cancun airport as new Mexican residents. Please go check out part 1 if you want to see our experience of arriving at the Cancun airport. And if you enjoyed this content, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel so that I can continue to bring you more content about Mexico and life in Tampa. Until next time, hasta luego, my friends.